Welcome guys, glad to have you back. We're doing something really exciting today on my channel. We're going to build a speaker box for a 12-inch sub for my Mini Cooper. As you can tell by my other videos, I've done a little bit of work to the engine and a little detail cleaning, but now I'm going to do something for myself. I'm going to put a 12-inch sub in the back hatch of that Mini. And I tell you, it's going to be an adventure because I don't know if you've ever seen the hatch area of a Mini Cooper, but it's really tiny. We're going to have to build a very interesting box to fit that 12 in there. Normally I build enclosures, but in this car it's really not possible for me because for one, I only have one speaker, and for two, there's not a lot of room. So I'm going to be settled with an open face 12 with a sealed box. It should sound pretty good. So anyway, I got my 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch medium density fiberboard, more known as MDF. That's the stuff that you want to build a speaker box out of. You don't want to use the thick stuff because it's not as solid. It flexes more and it's a little more brittle. This MDF here is very fine particles mashed together, and it makes a perfect speaker box. Let me show you the hatch. Here is the hatch area of my Mini Cooper. As you can see, there's only about 14 inches deep. So I'm planning on building the box to where it angles back with the seat. It comes across here and just allows my trunk to close. And then on this side is going to be open. I usually put my bag for work right here and everything, and I want to leave a little bit of cargo space here. So that's where the box is going. All right guys, I hope that you can hear me. I'll check the audio later, but we're going to start by cutting the base piece, and then we'll start cutting the walls around it, and then we'll do a dry fit inside the hatch, and I'll show you that just to make sure that all of my measurements are correct and it's going to fit in there with the hatch closed and everything. And that dry fit will tell me everything. And then I can trim down if I have to, because I've given myself an inch or two space on every side. But when you're building a box for a 12-inch speaker, you want to pretty much calculate in approximately 1 square foot of airspace inside the box. That's pretty much standard with the 12. 1 cubic square foot, or 1 cubic foot, not square foot, 1 cubic foot of airspace behind the 12-inch speaker. And if you had 2 12s in there, then of course it would double to 2. I'm actually using a free air sub. So technically you don't need to be exact on your calculations, but I like to get it as close to 1 cubic foot as I can, because that seems to be the standard. It seems to tune the speaker just right, and I'll go into tuning when I get to that point. But anyway, I'm going to start cutting. I'm going to fast forward the cuts and everything. I'm sure you don't want to sit there and watch me cut. Stay with me. This is going to be a fun build. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because I do all kinds of interesting videos on my channel, anywhere from guns, cars, to electronics. Stay tuned. We got a lot of coming. And just to show you, this cup says it all. Okay, I'm going to make my first cut. It's the base of the board. Now will give me the outline of where the box is going to sit inside the hatch. And how I measure my measurements, I know that my blade is approximately a 1/16 to an 1/8 inch blade. And so I account for that when I'm measuring, so that when I get my cut made, it's just a hair over the measurement. That way there, when I get my box built, I can sand all the edges down nice and flat, run the router around them so they're all nice and smooth, and that creates a much nicer box. This speaker box here, this is the speaker I'm going to use here. This speaker box I built for my wife's car a while back. We don't have that car anymore, so now we're going to reuse it. But here's what I mean about taking the router to the edges. It creates a nice smooth box. You don't have any sharp edges, and all the corners round up nice and neat. If I wanted to go further on this box, I could have filled all the screw holes because they're all countersunk. I could have filled all these in. I could have painted it, stained it, did all kinds of neat stuff to it. But as you can see, this is a large density fiber particle board. This is the stuff that I said you don't want to build speaker box out of because it's not as quality for a speaker box, and you can tell the difference. There's the large fiber. You can see the large fibers here. Here is the MDF, and you can't see all those large chunks. They're much smaller, and that is the difference. This box sounded just fine. You could hear it going down the road and everything, but I think that the box that I'm going to build today is going to be much nicer. I'm going to use the same amp. The amplifier I had for this box is an Alpine. It's rated at about 75 watts, 130 something bridged. We're going to go ahead and use this in the Mini. I think it's going to drive the speaker just fine. Now for the fun part. Set that off to the side until we're ready for that speaker. All right. Ear protection, just like out at the range, you got to protect your hearing. Small test cut, and the test cut is right here, and I want to make sure that my blade is on the outer edge of my line, and that way there my edge will be like a 1/16 longer than I need it to be, and that will allow me to have perfect edges. See that? That's what I like to see. My board, I like to go a hair past the other line I am intersecting, because this board is 3/4 inch and the blade is curved, so you have to go a little deeper in order to get it. And I'll show you what I do to this corner in just a second. Okay, I usually take my jigsaw and I take a wood blade and I'll take it and I'll cut that corner with it, and that will allow me to have a really nice edge. And when I cut it the other way, it's not going to rip the corner off, and that causes problems. Okay, and you saw that I had to take two stabs at it, because my first one was over here to the right, and this one here is going to leave me just probably maybe a 30 seconds of material left on this corner, which is perfect. There we go. And when you're all done, you have a nice corner to work with. Yeah, there's a little bit of nub right here. I don't know if the camera sees it. A little bit of nub there because the blade on the jigsaw is not as wide as the blade on the circular saw. But that there could be taken out with a little bit of sandpaper easily. And so right now we have my base piece for my new speaker box. Now we're going to work on, I draw everything out, I measure it all out, and here's pretty much how the side view is going to look. See if I get the camera to focus on that. Okay, there's my measurements too, just in case you want to see it. Okay. Alrighty guys, we're going to go ahead and do the backside, because the bottom and the backside are the ones that I'm more curious about, because I can lay it in there and make sure that the hatch is going to close. And then I'll do the top side, set everything up, do a dry fit on my workbench here, and then I'll be able to measure and angle cut the top and bottom to accept this slanted front piece where the speaker is going to eventually mount. T here. This is one that is commonly used for cutting drywall. I think it's a great tool to use for making straight lines. I only create one line toward the edge, and I make sure that this is flat against the mill cut edge. It tends to be a very straight cut. Pause it to take a break. And we're going to get back rolling right along. Our next cut is going to be for the top part. I know that that the top part will be a maximum of 10 inches in. And then I will angle cut with my saw table. I will angle cut the appropriate angle for connecting down here, because you don't want to just screw it in here because the angle will not be right and you'll have a big sloppy corner. Not them too much, just enough. Let me show you where we're at so far. So far we have this angle. This piece, these corners are going to be cut on my table saw at an angle in order to accommodate the board that's going to be set at an angle here. And once we get this cut here, we can lay in a piece on the front side here. That's the exciting part, because that's when you just throw in your side pieces and you start cutting the hole for the speaker, and everything is going to start coming together. And that's where we're at so far. And you see how this edge sticks up about 1/8 of an inch. Yeah, I cut that a little bit too much, but that's okay. And that's why I do it, so that when I sand down, I can sand down even and not have wavy sides like I used to do when I first started building speaker boxes. I'm 42 now, and I started building speaker boxes when I was 16. And let me tell you a little background on that. When I was 16, I didn't have a lot of money. I had a job, but of course I paid for my own insurance and the upkeep on my cars. Well, I wanted to put together a really nice stereo system in my Honda CRX I had. To tell you a quick little story, I pulled up to a place up there called Kimball Car Audio, and the owners of that company came out and they were looking around the parking lot, and I get out because I was going to show them my new stereo. Well, they were looking kind of curious at me because they thought by the sound of my stereo system, the vehicle that they sponsored and put all their fancy equipment in, they thought that he had come to the shop. Well, surprisingly enough, that was me. That was my stereo. The one that I put together, and get this, I only spent $300, and I was as loud and as powerful as their sponsored car. Of course, this was years ago, so cars weren't as loud and powerful as they are now. There's cars out there with 20, 30 speakers in it, which is ridiculous, but it definitely shows the power of a stereo system and what it can be. So we'll go ahead and continue on. Thank you for listening to that story of my life. Okay, so since I'm lining up this lower piece with the milled edges, I'm going to have almost perfect edges here, and I'll still sand down all the edges to make sure there's no rough spots, because I will take a router and route out all of the sharp edges and make it a smooth, curvy box. Make it beautiful, sexy. Okay, so here is the dilemma. The angle cuts I need to make for the front piece. I'm having an issue with my saw table. It's a old, used, and abused saw table. I need a new one, but I can't get the angle correct on that one. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do it old school. I'm going to have to create a guard here and use my circular saw at the correct angle and cut along the edge and make that angle. This is old school. I've done this before with a few of my enclosures I've built, and it's turned out all right. There was a little bit of sanding and reshaping that needed to be done, but let's see, with a little bit of time and a little bit of knowledge, if we can get this to work out better. Okay, let's see how that angle turned out. Okay. As you can see, this angle turned out pretty decent as far as the cut. Now let's see if that actually fits. Looks really good so far. I'm very happy with that, so. I think I should get some screws in this to seal it up. I think so. All right. Okay, now I got to do a dry fit because I got my main structure built here. And now I need to do a dry fit to make sure that everything's going to sit in there the way it's supposed to. Okay. So the issue I found was my front piece has to go on top of the bottom piece instead of on the outside. But that's okay. I cut an angle here on the inside here, or on the outside, the front edge of the bottom piece, which is going to line up beautifully with the car. And this is just one of those things that you come across when you are dealing with building a speaker box custom. You know, you make your measurements, you make your cuts, and then you dry fit, and then you make adjustments after that. It's all expected. Every box I've built, there have to be fine tuning, and that's fine. We'll overcome this. I used to have a 1/2-inch countersinking tool before, but when I moved out of California, it somehow got misplaced. So it's only $1. Okay, first of all, I want to set this flat here, like this, because what I want to do is I want to align my holes up. I want to measure halfway down the board, which would be a good 3/8. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little line here, and then another line here at 3/8. And I'll show you talking about here. Since the halfway point between a 3/4 inch is 3/8, I drew a line here and a line here, and I'm going to draw this line here, and then I'm going to space out my screws evenly. In about half the board here, I'm probably going to put, I don't know, 3 screws, and then 2 more over here, equaling 5 screws on each side, which will create a nice sturdy. Okay guys, my camera stopped. I ran out of memory, so I've swapped around some stuff, and now I'm back recording. So I don't know where I left off, but I pretty much got the box built. Just to recap, I've got the main, front, and back and top all assembled. Now I'm going to work on doing the side pieces, and so I can get going on those. And that's where I'm at now. I'm going to cut a side piece for it, and then I can get it going from there. I'm going to do a fit into the hatch, make sure that we're still ready to go. Okay, so the dry fit went nice. It actually fits in there pretty snugly. Okay, here's the box. It's a nice tight fit, and I don't know if you can see that with the lighting, but it fits in there nice and even, nice and snug, and we're going to go ahead and keep it right there. Now we got to cut the hole for the speaker. Okay, here's about halfway through sanding everything down. It's starting to look pretty good. It's starting to take shape. Everything's sanding down nice and even. I'm not going to bore you with recording the sanding process, but I will have it up on the bench and show you it when I'm all finished. Be right back. Okay, whoop, let me take off my mask here. Okay, well, I've sanded down. Here's the front side. Here's the top. Of course, the back side and everything. We've sanded it completely down, and it looks really good. I've blown it off a little bit, but I got to blow it off a little bit more to get it a little more perfect, a little more cleaner. I got to blow it off a little more to get it a little cleaner, and then I'm going to wipe it down with a tacky cloth so I can start filling in all the holes and imperfections with filler. Doesn't like to stick to dusty wood. But here's where the speaker is going to be mounted. I think it's going to look really nice after it's all done. Okay, here's the stuff I used. I used this wood putty stuff, plastic wood. It's like an epoxy type of putty, so it dries really hard. I've covered up all the screw holes, and I applied quite a bit, build up a little bit, and you can sand it down and it'll be nice and smooth, and you won't have to refill anything. Well, hopefully. So I got all the sides done. Everything's nice and filled in. The little cracks that were here are gone now. They're all filled in. And then after this sets up and dries, I will come out here and I will sand it all down with fine sandpaper. Sand down every side again. Get it all nice and sanded down and smooth. And then we will cut the hole and then use the router on all the edges. Get it nice and rounded and smooth. All right. After doing a final sand, I've got all the corners sanded down, all the screw holes. Everything's looking nice and smoothly. And prior to starting the camera up, I had measured my center point for my speaker face here. And I've put a screw in here, and I've drawn a circle of 11 inches. That's what my speaker requires to fit into. And I started already cutting it with my jigsaw, but as you can see, my circle's coming out pretty circular. And we're gonna go ahead and finish cutting this out, try the speaker in here, and when I get a nice tight fit, I'm going to drill the guide holes for the speaker screws. And once we've done that, I'm gonna finish any sanding or any prep work to the surface, and then we're going to start painting the box. I'm going to prime it and paint it black, and that's all that we're going to do to finish up the exterior. As soon as the box is all painted and ready to install, that's when we'll go ahead and start wiring up the car for the amplifier. Now we're going to drill a hole down here in the corner for our speaker wire to come in, because we're going to mount the amp right here. We'll get all of our drilling and sanding done before we start painting it. Okay, now we got the box primered. Now we're going to go ahead and put a coat of black acrylic paint over the primer. This will finish up the outer coat of what we're going to be doing with the Okay, now our box is ready for a second coat of the black. And then this should do it for the painting, so we can finally start getting the car wired up and ready for it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here is my box. It is all dry. It is ready to go. I got some fingerprints on it already. She looks like she is ready to be finished up. She turned out pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. Now we're going to go ahead and put some clear silicone around all the corners inside, seal it up, and then we will be able to install our speaker, and that part will be done. Be right back. This is it, guys. This is all finished. All I got to do is wire it into my car. But that is how I built my speaker box for my Mini Cooper.